Hi everyone, thanks for being here. I'm Dominica Canor and I'm here with Faith Gancro and Julie Radwan. Today we're going to talk about something that is usually overlooked in early American history, the role of women in Jamestown. When most people think of Jamestown, they picture an all-male settlers, Captain John Smith, and maybe some tobacco farming, but not a lot of focus goes towards women. And that's what we wanted to explore, how women actually helped shape the colony and played a huge part in its survival and growth. So having said that, let's get into it and take a closer look at women in Jamestown. Jamestown is often remembered as the beginning of English America. It was established in 1607 and became the first permanent English settlement in what is now known as the United States. Before Jamestown, English colonization efforts like the mysterious Roanoke colony had failed, but this time, the settlers held on. It is important to know that Jamestown was initially an all-male settlement. Over 100 men came with the hope of finding wealth, land, and opportunity. But without women, the early colony was little more than a military-style outpost, one that struggled to maintain itself. The area was known as Virginia, named after Queen Elizabeth I, which was also called the Virgin Queen. And this name reflected both her status and England's ambitions for this new territory. As for the Jamestown expedition, it wasn't launched by the Crown itself, but by a private business, the Virginia Company in London. It was a joint stock company, meaning that investors pooled money together to fund colonial ventures, hoping for profitable returns through new trade routes and valuable resources. The settlement was named Jamestown in honor of King James I of England, who had granted the company's charter. The enterprise was not just about exploration, it was about commerce, wealth, and expansion. However, as the company then realized, building a successful, lasting colony would require more than economic investment. It would also need people willing to settle permanently, and that meant bringing over women to create real communities. So the first woman didn't arrive in Jamestown until 1608, a year after the settlement was founded. But it wasn't 11 years later that larger groups of women were actively recruited by the Virginia Company to cross the Atlantic. These women were often referred to as maids for wives, a term used in company documents that reflected their intended role, to marry the settlers and help form stable households. The presence of women brought much-needed social structure and stability to Jamestown. They played a critical role in transforming the colony into a functioning society, rather than a temporary camp for future seekers. Their arrival also encouraged many men to stay, plant roots, and build lives rather than returning home to England. In this way, the women were central not only to the social development of the colony, but also to its economic growth and long-term survival. Life in Jamestown was harsh, and the roles of women were demanding and diverse. Their work was crucial to keeping the settlement running. One of their primary roles was agricultural labor. They helped tend gardens, grow food, and preserve crops, all of which were vital to feeding the community. They also carried domestic duties such as cooking, cleaning, sewing, and maintaining the home. Although these tasks may seem like routine today, in the wilderness of early colony Virginia, they were critical for health and survival. Homes were rudimentary, food was scarce, and illness was common. Keeping a household functioning was a monumental task. In addition, women helped raise children, support their families, and often helped run family farms along their husbands. In every sense, they were foundational to the daily operations and long-term stability of the colony. Perhaps the most significant contribution of women in Jamestown was their role in helping the colony survive. Their presence brought a sense of permanence and order, moving the settlement from a military-style camp to a more traditional society. They endured harsh conditions, including disease outbreaks, food shortages, and severe weather just like the men. But instead of fleeing or giving up, they contributed through labor, caregiving, and perseverance. Women helped keep families together, which in turn strengthened the community. Their resilience helped anchor Jamestown through its most difficult years. One of those difficult years were the surviving time, which lasted for about a year. It was a tragic period in which the settlers experienced extreme food shortages. This was due to a mix of poor harvests, drought, disease, and conflict with indigenous groups, all of which were cut off in essential resources. During this time, the colony's population plummeted from nearly 500 to just about 60 survivors. And yet, the women still played a crucial role. They preserved what little food they could using traditional preservation techniques and nursed the sick and dying, often to a great personal risk. While their contributions during this period are not as well documented as those of military leaders and company officials, they were vital behind the scenes and doing the work that allowed others to make it through. A special mention is Pocahontas. No story of early Jamestown would be complete without Pocahontas, a remarkable young woman from the Powhatan people. She was born around 1596 and was the daughter of Chief Powhatan, the powerful leader of a large indigenous confederacy in the region. She met the English settlers, most notably Captain John Smith, shortly after they arrived. According to Smith's later accounts, Pocahontas intervened to save his life when he was captured by her people, although some historians now debate the accuracy of it. What is clear is that she played a vital diplomatic role, often acting as a liaison between the English and the Powhatan people during times of tension and misunderstanding. In 1613, Pocahontas was captured by the English during a military conflict. During her captivity, she converted to Christianity, took the name Rebecca, and eventually married John Rolfe, an English tobacco planter. This marriage led to a brief period of peace between the two groups, often called the Peace of Pocahontas. Over time, Pocahontas became a symbol, especially in England, of the success of colonization, used to justify English expansion. But behind the myth is a real woman who was caught between two worlds and underwent profound personal and cultural upheaval.
Hi, this is Julia Radwin, and I will be discussing women in England versus women in Jamestown. To begin, in England, women were working, but they were facing a wage gap. So, although they were working, they were receiving maybe half or one-third of wages that men were. And this could be seen as purposefully so that women had to rely on their husbands because of the amount of money that they were making compared to their husbands. It is also said that low wages were rooted by inferiority, so how they saw women, and this could also be politically, physically, or intellectually. Women were not given a legal identity. So this means that they couldn't own anything and they were almost shielded by their father or their husband. And I will get into the details on the next slide about specifically what they could not own or do. While in Jamestown, women were making bigger impacts in their society. It is said that women provided the stability needed for Jamestown's survival because women could bring many skills that could help the colony flourish, and they could also help repopulate the colony. And this kind of gave it a better chance at being permanent and its survival. Additionally, women in Jamestown were getting more rights. It is said that women were once taught to be homemakers as their occupation. But the women here were deciding that they wanted to be more involved outside of the home, not just in the home. And those with more money had a better chance of doing so. So it is said that elite women could have more access to the public sphere and new opportunities to influence public life. It was also more accepted that women got to choose their husbands here and that they could own things after death of their husbands, such as inheritances, which was not common in England, which I will get to on the next slide. It is important to add for both Jamestown and England, there were hunger present in both societies. On the next slide are marriage and rights. To begin, I will be talking about tobacco brides, which you can see on the bottom right picture, which are women arriving to go to Jamestown. And on the top right, I put a picture of a tobacco auction in Virginia, which seemed relevant because it also shows how important and valuable tobacco was to the people. So Jamestown needed women so badly for their skills and to help repopulate the colony that they had to come up with a way to bring women there. And the way that they decided to do so was that they made a promise to women and they made ads that they put in England for women to see. So these ads promised women that if they came to Jamestown and they married these men, that they would receive tobacco, which could be 120 to 150 pounds of it, among other things, which were items like clothing and land. And as mentioned on the previous slide, these are things that women in England usually did not own. So not only was there starvation in England, but they couldn't own anything, meaning that if they came to this new colony, they had the chance at maybe not having this starvation problem, but also being able to own things and have more rights. So this was seen as a opportunity. which is a plus side. And also, these ads from England brought about 150 wives, which was enough to help populate the colony. In both England and Jamestown, there was a doctrine of coverture, but it was way more strict in England. So under this, women did not legally exist. She could only exist under her father when she was born, or under her husband after being married. This means that a woman could not be sued. She could not make any contracts. She could not own anything, which includes a business or sometimes working for a business. She couldn't own any clothing or even the rights to her own children. As mentioned previously, this was more relaxed in Jamestown. If a husband died, sometimes the wife would take over that land and could inherit it, where this would not usually happen in England. So to conclude, Jamestown faced many struggles. One was the starving time, where many people either starved to death or they got sick and died, or they got sick and could not work. All women made an admirable impact on the development of Jamestown. So white women are mentioned a lot, such as tobacco brides, but there are also other women, such as Pocahontas, who put their time and effort into helping the early settlers survive by bringing them food. Lastly, women in England and Jamestown had different rights and their lives were very different. So in England, women were less likely to choose their husband or to own land, and women in Jamestown were given way more rights. They could be more involved politically and socially. And then to add to this, although it doesn't correlate directly to Jamestown, I decided to add the Remember the Ladies letter that Abigail Adams wrote to her husband. And the only reason that I thought this was appropriate is to reflect on women and how they had to fight for their rights, especially against men, but also the development of women's rights today, which we can reflect on in comparison to this presentation. Our understanding of this has grown where we did not know the exact impacts that women had on making this colony permanent. We did not know all of the details that went into this, and there was not only a lot of effort to get women to Jamestown, but also effort from the women once there to help the colony survive, such as helping the men. Lastly, we hope the examples that we have provided, such as Pocahontas and the tobacco brides, have helped your understanding as well. And we also hope that you can take away a little bit about women's history. Thank you.